the brutal, grinding calculus of modern war, the front lines are no longer just lines on a map. They are a dome of perpetual danger, an invisible ceiling patrolled by hornets with explosive stings. For 4 years, the skies over Ukraine have become the most contested space on the planet, a place where the tide of battle can turn not on the treads of a tank, but on the whisper of a propeller. In this relentless contest of engineering and attrition, a race between nations and their vast military-industrial complexes, one of the most astonishing breakthroughs came not from a gleaming NATO laboratory or a state-funded defense conglomerate, but from the mind of an 18-year-old gamer in Kyiv, armed with little more than a 3D printer, a library of YouTube tutorials, and a burning desire for retribution. He conceived of something so simple, so elegant, it was almost absurd: a shotgun shell that fires a net, capable of snatching Russian FPV drones right out of the air. It sounds like science fiction, yet on the blood-soaked earth of the front, it is already a lifesaver. This is the story of how one teenager, fueled by ingenuity born from desperation, may have found a loophole in a billion-dollar arms race, and in doing so, offered a glimpse into the very future of conflict. Innovation in Ukraine often flows from established channels where the nation's defense industry has already redefined modern warfare with its fleets of deadly sea and air drones. Yet just as often, necessity gives birth to invention on the battlefield itself. Soldiers devise clever, homespun solutions to terrifying new problems, like stringing up simple fishing nets across trench lines and supply routes, a low-tech shield against high-tech death from above. The importance of these anti-drone measures cannot be overstated. When the full-scale invasion began in February 2022, the conflict looked, at least initially, familiar. Russian columns of armor and infantry advanced under the cover of artillery and air power, a scene from a 20th century playbook. The Ukrainian military met them with a similar arsenal, though they were already beginning to experiment with the asymmetric power of unmanned aircraft. Of course, sophisticated drones were already part of the military toolkit long before 2022. The skies were familiar with high-altitude surveillance craft like the RQ-4 Global Hawk, potent attackers like the MQ-9 Reaper, and the now famous Turkish Bayraktar loitering munitions. But the sheer saturating proliferation of cheap disposable FPV and kamikaze drones, as the primary weapon of the battlefield, had not yet become the defining feature of warfare. Fast forward to today, and the sight of a massed tank charge is a rarity. The most formidable main battle tanks on either side, from Russia's T-90M to the American-supplied M1 Abrams, have been proven tragically vulnerable. A tiny, agile drone, costing less than a used car, can deliver a crippling blow to a multi-million-dollar behemoth. According to NATO intelligence cited by the Kyiv Independent, FPV drones are responsible for a staggering 60% of Russia's colossal tank losses. That grim statistic is mirrored in human cost. Medics report that 60 to 70% of Ukrainian battlefield casualties are now inflicted by drones. The danger is constant, omnipresent, extending up to 20 miles behind the supposed safety of the contact line. Swarms of these inexpensive hunter-killers relentlessly seek out any sign of life or movement: bunkers, vehicles, infantry squads, even a lone soldier. If you can be seen, you can be targeted. In the early stages, Ukraine carved out a decisive edge in drone technology and deployment, facing an adversary with a nearly threefold advantage in manpower and conventional hardware. Kyiv embraced unmanned systems as a critical equalizer. In 2024 alone, President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that Ukraine had produced some 2.2 million drones and deployed even more, dramatically slowing Russian advances and inflicting punishing losses. But Russia, with its immense industrial base, was never going to stand still. Over time, it began to close the gap. Ukraine's drone production remains a marvel of decentralized resilience, a network of hundreds of small workshops operating out of apartments, basements, and warehouses across the country, sometimes even in fortified positions at the front. Russia, in stark contrast, has centralized its efforts. Its massive factory in Alabuga, Tatarstan, now churns out as many as 5,000 Geran or Shahed-type loitering munitions every single month, despite being struck by Ukrainian long-range drones on at least 5 separate occasions since 2024. Furthermore, the Russians have developed a significant advantage in one particular area: fiber optic FPV drones. These machines are physically tethered to their operator by miles of hair-thin fiber optic cable, making them completely immune to the jamming and electronic warfare that are Ukraine's primary defense. This escalating technological duel, a frantic ballet of measure and countermeasure, has made anti-drone defense a matter of survival for Ukraine. The challenge is twofold. First, there is the nightly terror rained upon its cities. Russian drone swarms growing in size throughout the summer of 2025 to between 150 and 700 drones per night target civilian infrastructure far from the fighting. Ukraine's air defenders have become remarkably adept at countering this threat, consistently reporting shoot-down rates exceeding 90%. The drones, typically Russian-made Geran 2 and Geran 3 models, are analogs of the Iranian Shahed 136. They are relatively slow and notoriously loud, earning them the nickname flying lawnmowers, making them detectable targets. The Geran 2 cruises at about 112 miles per hour, while the newer turbojet-powered Geran 3 can reach speeds closer to 550 or 600 kilometers per hour. At these speeds, they are vulnerable to Ukraine's sophisticated Western-supplied air defense systems like the MIM-104 Patriot, the Iris-T SLM, and NASAMS, as well as the air-to-air missiles on its F-16s. But this success comes at a crippling cost. The economic equation is brutally unsustainable. If this is the grim reality for defending major cities, the situation for the soldiers in the trenches is infinitely more perilous. Firing a $500,000 missile at a tactical FPV drone worth a few $100s is not just unfeasible, it's impossible. This brings us to the second, and perhaps more critical challenge: providing effective, low-cost anti-drone systems for the front lines. And this is precisely where an 18-year-old from Kyiv named Yurii enters the story. Ukraine's first layer of drone defense is electronic warfare, or EW. These systems work by overwhelming a drone's electronic senses, jamming its communication and navigation signals to force it to crash or return home. Ukraine operates thousands of systems like the Lithuanian Skywiper and D-Drone's portable sensors and jammers. Over 300 of these sensors are deployed along the front, capable of identifying nearly 600 different drone models by their radio signatures. But these are largely useless against Russia's fiber optic drones and those flying outside their effective range. The next line of defense is kinetic and surprisingly effective: a hail of bullets. But these aren't always your grandfather's machine guns. Systems like the British-supplied MSIDS Terrahawk Paladin use a 30mm autocannon with high-explosive proximity-fused rounds to engage targets nearly 2 miles away. Australia's Slinger system uses a similar cannon to automatically track and destroy targets. Ukraine is also deploying its own state-of-the-art Wolf 25 anti-drone system, featuring a 25mm cannon with airburst and armor-piercing rounds, guided by 4 radars providing 360-degree coverage. Even helicopters have been drafted into the role of drone hunters. According to Commander-in-Chief Oleksandr Syrsky, these crews have become a vital component of the layered defense, with pairs of helicopters, one for spotting, one for shooting, sometimes taking down up to 40% of the drones in their sector. Perhaps the most advanced homegrown solution is the Sky Sentinel. It's an autonomous AI-guided turret armed with a heavy machine gun. Dubbed the Shad Catcher, it can detect, track, and engage targets from small FPVs to cruise missiles, all on its own after receiving radar data and remote authorization. But at $150,000 per unit, and with dozens needed to protect a single city, its protection is a long way from reaching the individual soldier huddling in a foxhole. For them, the defense often comes down to their standard-issue rifle or shotgun, and it is in that gap, between the multi-million-dollar missile and the humble rifle, that Yurii's invention was born. His journey began in 2023. An 11th grader living in Kyiv's Shulyavka district, a neighborhood that had seen fierce fighting and was a frequent target of missile attacks, Yurii felt a profound sense of uselessness. He was too young to enlist, bored with school, and spent his time absorbing everything he could from YouTube about engineering, military hardware, and 3D printing. The motivation was to bring benefit to the country, he explained. School was moving too slowly, My neighborhood was being bombed and I wanted to do something useful. His first concept was a quieter propeller for FPV drones. He brought the idea to a defense tech incubator, but the pitch fell flat. Undeterred, he shifted his focus to countermeasures. On the battlefield, 75% of injuries now come from drones, he observed. Creating anti-drone systems can truly save lives. The spark of an idea, one that would change everything, ignited during a first-person shooter video game session with a friend who knew about ammunition. It was during those gamers' discussions, he recalled, that the idea of anti-drone net rounds for a grenade launcher came to me. He and his partner built a prototype and took it to the Presidential Brigade. A soldier there was intrigued but explained the unit had no procedures for testing such a device. Their breakthrough came when they connected with the legendary 3rd Assault Brigade, a unit celebrated for its tactical innovation. They had recently conducted the first ever capture of a prisoner, using only a combination of air and ground drones. The officer who inspected their prototype was astonished to learn its creators were still high school students. What kind of children in the world can make ammunition? He marveled. Ukrainian children, of course. He promised to see what he could do. A few weeks later, Yuri's team was at a training center, where the military would attach the explosive charge, something strictly illegal for a minor to handle. After the initial test, the officer gave them a crucial piece of feedback. Okay guys, this is cool, but in our brigade there are more shotguns than grenade launchers, so make us the same thing for shotguns. Within days, they had redesigned the munition for a new caliber. 2 weeks passed. Then a message landed from the officer, raw and triumphant. It fucked up works. An order for 100 units for live combat trials followed. The sudden demand caught the young inventors off guard. They hadn't considered the challenges of scaling production. Their learning curve was steep and fraught with responsibility. While watching a training video from the 3rd Brigade, they saw their own round being tested. It jammed in the shotgun. The instructor joked, "Now I'm going to die," because it didn't fire. For Yurii, the moment was terrifying. I was really scared, he remembered, because I realized if something goes wrong, a person could be killed. But soon, he received the validation he desperately needed. A call came from a special forces unit on the Kursk front. "We tested your stuff. It was awesome," the soldier on the line said. He reported that they had used Yurii shotgun rounds to bring down a Mavic reconnaissance drone from 165 feet, and then neutralized 2 incoming Russian FPV drones. In that moment, Yurii knew. His idea, born from a video game, had just saved real lives. He now walks the path of a tech startup founder, programming, testing, seeking partners, and applying for a grant from Brave One, Ukraine's main defense tech hub. Coincidentally, Brave One is also exploring low-cost solutions. They recently codified a new 5.45mm rifle cartridge that fragments mid-air, creating a shotgun-like spread to hit small, fast-moving drones. They also list a portable anti-drone pistol, a lightweight jammer for personal protection. Yurii also has direct competition from a Ukrainian company called Tenita, which produces the Mitla, a single-use pre-packaged net launcher. It's a small disposable tube that fires an 11.5 by 11.5 foot net, using a pyrotechnic cartridge, effective up to 82 feet. Yet, the simple adaptability of Yuri's invention, a specialized round for a standard, ubiquitous weapon, may give it the edge for widespread adoption. Today, Yurii is legally an adult standing at a crossroads. He juggles online university classes, the demands of his fledgling company, and participation in Centuria, a youth paramilitary camp run by his partners in the 3rd Assault Brigade. He belongs to a generation forged in war, a generation that has refused to be a passive victim of history. Their workshops are garages, their R&D departments are Discord channels, and their testing grounds are the most dangerous places on Earth. As he looks to the future, his resolve is clear and unwavering. "I am not afraid to die," he says, "but I want to be useful first."